This will be the third video in the CB&I video description set. In this one, we'll discuss three of the unit-specific presentations we did that talk about the technical aspects of the construction of the three of the units in the new refinery. First one we'll do is the tank farm. This was another interactive presentation done in PowerPoint where we'll identify the outline of the tank farm, which is the biggest geographical unit on the refinery. It covers the most area and has the most storage tanks on it. There were two sections in the brown field, which is the old refinery, and then the green field, which was additions to the tank farm. So we got sort of a locator map of all those, and we put in a quick description borrowed from expert reports to describe what the tank farm does, what it consists of, what was done to it. We made sort of an interactive map here, color-coded by responsibility. All the tanks marked in red were left up to Reficar to refurbish or rebuild, whatever they're going to do with them. And tanks marked in blue were CB&I's responsibility, which had to be either built new or going to be refurbished. So the ones that are marked, we also had an interactive link to, so you could click on the icon, go to a photograph that gives you the specifics about the tank. Did that for a number of them, kind of as a way to introduce how big these are, what they contain, what role they play in the refining process. And in some cases we had early in construction and late in construction. The spheres one was kind of a nice setup. Those are all new spheres for holding gaseous material. So kind of a nice overview for the tank farm with links to construction photographs and ways to identify what those are. There were subsequent presentations that talked about the amount of money that was spent on this. It was a big chunk of the cost of upgrading this, and it was not a little bit of the whole project. So it was kind of a way to introduce the tank farm issues. The next one we'll do is the changes to the catalytic cracker. So this was one of the units that was in the old refinery, but it was very much in need of updating and repair, and needed serious rework. And it was one of the more difficult ones because it was embedded in the old refinery, so there was no room to work around it. And Reficar imposed the restriction that the new changes be done while the old unit was operating. So that really compounded the production problem. So here's Unit 002, the catalytic cracker, which is buried deep in the old refinery. Here it is in relationship to all the other units. And again, photograph here with the excerpt from the expert report explaining all of the stuff this does. And you can see it's a very dense structure on a very small footprint, and they had to work in here to put in a new unit while the old unit was running, which was really a major problem. We kind of highlighted some of the major vessels that needed to go in, and these are huge new structures that were built elsewhere and then brought in by barge and huge trucks to get them onto the site and then lifted into place with a giant crane. So we kind of set the stage for what the logistical problems of putting in a 500-ton reactor that's 170 feet tall. Show where it fits. It gets buried in all the supporting structures here. And the regenerator, which was probably the heaviest one, 723 tons, that was lifted into place while the unit was running. Here's a photograph of that regenerator on its wheeled carrier that they brought it in from the roll-on, roll-off port. And the new fractionator which is just a monstrous structure. Zoomed in here to the bottom of it so you can see a man in comparison to the size of that fractionator. It was monstrous, sort of a before and after comparison. Here's what they started with, the old rusty equipment from the original fractionator or catalytic cracker, and then the whole new unit all up and running. One of the bigger stories about this was that they had to use the world's biggest crane to put this in. So this crane had to be brought in on, I think, 180 tractor trailer rigs in order to put this in place. And here's the regenerator it's going to lift over this operating refinery. I did a quick little animation that shows that crane is going to have to lift it up off its carrier, swing it over already operating units, or continuing to operate units, and then drop it into its support structure on the new side of the fractionator, or on the catalytic cracker. So a massive undertaking that took months to do, to actually get the crane in and build it and then do those lifts. This regenerator was the biggest one, 100, or the heaviest one anyway. We zoomed in real close to put a little image of a man on there to kind of give a sense of what a monstrous structure this thing was. And then in addition to getting it into site, they had to reinforce a haul road. They brought it into this dock, and then they had to reinforce a road in order to get this heavy thing into the site where the crane could lift it into the cat cracker. So it took a lot of trucks to bring in the parts, and had to install separate pilings to hold it up to keep it from tipping over. Took a month to build it and a month to test it before you can even start to work with it. So a major undertaking that was all done at CB&I's direction with no failures. This was a big deal, and working in tight quarters with no room to maneuver. Then the final one we'll talk about is changes to Unit 44, which was a alkylation unit, and this was a big contention from Reficar that CB&I spent too much money trying to design and build this unit, because Reficar purchased it from a company called Big West, who was going to install it at a refinery in California. And so that California project didn't happen, so Big West sold the whole unit as is to Reficar. And Reficar thought that they could just have CB&I, plunk it down on their site with no modifications and it would work fine. Well, that wasn't the case, because they took too simplistic a view of it, and CB&I had to do a huge amount of re-engineering to make it fit in that site. So we did this little tutorial that demonstrates why that couldn't happen like Reficar thought it would. There's the unit. It's one of the new units that was out there in undeveloped land, so it started from scratch. Here's a little description of what its function is, and it's this long pipe rack and quite a large number of vessels that had to be installed. A few other nice photographs of that unit. So the story was, this was designed for a refinery in California, and here's the diagram of what the plan was. And of course this plan never happened, but this is the unit and the equipment the Reficar purchased, and they thought that they were just going to plop it down as is. So in order to demonstrate that couldn't happen, we did this little animation that shows, we highlighted the vessels in red and the horizontal pipe rack. And in order to make this work in the Reficar site in Colombia, first thing they had to do was switch all the vessels left-right along the long axis. It was kind of a mirror image. It wasn't exactly as planned. So that was step one. And step two was the whole thing flipped along its long axis, so everything that was on the top is now on the bottom, and vice versa. And that's what needed to happen in order to get this whole thing to fit into the site in Colombia. And then, in addition to all that, the equipment required numerous modifications. First, that by the time it got there, it was old and had to be refurbished. That was remarked in red. The company itself that built this required changed their specifications, so they had to modify some of the items. Then there were replacements for some of those items. There was new equipment that had to be added. Licensing changes in the process that they bought required yet further changes, and then in order to handle the utilities around here, they had to add the stuff in yellow. So not only did CB&I have to reconfigure it to fit on this site, there were numerous updates that needed to be done to that before they could meet licensing requirements and make it work within the existing refinery. So an interesting story about one of the little episodes of Reficar saying, oh, this is easy, why did you take so long? And the truth of the matter being it was a massively complex project, required a huge amount of re-engineering and construction and refurbishment in order to make it work. And that should cover all there are numerous other tutorials like this, but these were sort of the high-level ones that demonstrate some of the ways we address the issues that CB&I had.